The following program is being brought to you on the Voice America Variety Channel. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericavariety.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the hosts or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Relationship Radio with your host, Jim Duzak. Are you interested in marriage, divorce, midlife dating? Keep it tuned right here for the next hour as Jim and his guest explore some fascinating and important topics. Now, here's your host, Jim Duzak.
Hello, and welcome to Relationship Radio. I'm Jim Duzak. I'm a divorce lawyer and mediator, a columnist for ConnectionsForWomen.com and BoomerLiving.com, and the author of the book, Midlife Divorce and the Rebirth of Commitment. At one time, I even owned a dating service. You can learn more about me, if you'd like, by visiting my website, www.attorneyatlove.com. Now, this is not a call-in show, but I do love to hear from listeners. So if you have a question, a comment, or a suggestion, you can email me at jim@attorneyatlove.com. I'll do my best to get back to you the same day. My guest this week is Beverly Jewell. Beverly is one of the founders of Collaborative Divorce Services in Orange County, California. Now, I'll be asking Beverly shortly to tell us all about collaborative divorce and how it differs from the usual litigated divorce model, but I've tended to think of collaborative divorce as a kinder, gentler approach to divorce. We'll see if Beverly agrees with me on that. Collaborative divorce has gotten some headlines recently, and not just in law journals. Robin Williams and his wife have gone through a collaborative divorce in California that I believe has been finalized, and Madonna and her husband Guy Ritchie have gone the collaborative divorce route in England. Beverly's role in the collaborative divorce process is that of a divorce coach. Beverly also works as what I'll call a traditional marriage counselor. In other words, someone who helps people who have not filed for divorce and who usually want to enhance and preserve their marriage. She'll tell us a little later on what it's like to juggle what are essentially two different jobs. Beverly has a master's degree in counseling psychology from National University and has had a counseling practice in Southern California for nearly 15 years. For the past 5 years, she's also been active as a divorce coach. She has two websites. One is her collaborative divorce website, www.collaborativedivorceservices.com, and the other one is essentially, is for her counseling practice, and that's called www.essentialfocus.com. And you can reach Beverly by email at bev, at essentialfocus.com. Beverly, welcome to Relationship Radio.
Hi, Jim. Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, you're welcome, and I think it's going to be a very, very interesting subject because I really do believe that collaborative divorce is, before too long, it's going to be not just some curiosity, but it's going to be the norm or I hope it will be the norm in divorce cases. Why don't we tell our listeners a little bit what is collaborative divorce and what is your role in the process?
Collaborative divorce is a process that goes beyond the limitations of mediation. Mediation has been around, as you know, for 20, 30 years, and most everyone knows what that is as a non-adversarial process that keeps the couple out of the court system. Mm-hmm. But what the collaborative process does, it goes beyond that in that we have a team of professionals right from the beginning that helps the couple go through the process. Mm-hmm. A lot of times in mediation, other adjunct professionals are pulled in besides the one attorney. There might need to be a business evaluation, or they may need a parenting coordinator or counseling services. So this is something from the beginning we have that team that addresses the legal, financial, and emotional issues of the couple.
Right, and a mediator, even if the mediator is a lawyer, the mediator can't represent either party or advise them on their rights.
Exactly.
That's one very big difference. I've done a lot of mediations myself, and that is one of the tricky parts of it, because people sometimes, particularly people who are representing themselves, they oftentimes try to get the mediator to be their attorney, and sometimes it's difficult to explain the different roles to them. So in a collaborative divorce, in some ways, like a traditional, I'll call it a traditional or a litigated divorce, the husband and wife each has their own attorney.
Typically, that is the case.
Mm-hmm.
We have extended the model to be one attorney if the couple is able to work well with each other and they have a need to keep the costs down. If there's one attorney, they're able to do that. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times they would like to have someone in their corner giving them advice and guiding them on the legal issues. So the traditional model is 2 attorneys, 2 coaches, and 1 neutral financial professional.
Yep. And I understand that when the case begins that everybody involved, or at least the attorneys and the 2 clients, they sign a contract. Is that right?
They sign an agreement mm-hmm. that they will opt out of the court system. It's also a way to let the judge and the court know that a divorce is beginning, but we are choosing to do it out of court. There won't be a need for the calendar or a court date for any hearings. Mm-hmm. We're going to come up with our own settlement agreement, and we will let you know when we're finished. Everything that we do with the couple to come to that final conclusion of the final judgment is turned into the court at the end, and it is all legally binding.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know you're not the lawyer in the case, but essentially, can any lawyer handle a collaborative divorce, or are there special qualifications or special training that's necessary for a lawyer to do it this way?
There is. The requirement is that they go through the special training. Everyone begins with a 3-day training mm-hmm. Where the attorneys go off into one room for a day and the mental health professionals into another room and the financial people into another. And during that first day or 2, we're all learning how to shift into what collaborative means. And this is, I think, more difficult for the attorneys who have entrenched in their system the fight model to win at all costs in the litigation. So for them to shift gears and take off that hat, I think it's a little more difficult. That's why it's important that they have the training as well as extensive mediation training.
And I'm sure there's some resistance in the legal profession to this, because most lawyers, a lot of lawyers just feel philosophically that, listen, if you really want to get at the truth, you have to have, depositions and, the ability to cross-examine the other side and all that kind of thing. It's kind of hard to get out of that mindset, isn't it?
It is, and we're currently in the process of educating the public as well as other professionals how this can just be a much better way to do it. It doesn't have to be the old model of litigation. As you know, with that, no one wins, and it's very costly emotionally and financially to the couple.
Well, one thing that people often don't understand, and lawyers or counselors like yourself have to explain it to them, is that in no-fault divorce states, which basically means everywhere nowadays except for New York State, as I understand it, it almost doesn't matter what happened in the marriage and how ugly it got and how nasty the person was and all of that, except in maybe certain limited areas having to do with child custody, if somebody's maybe a drug addict or something like that. But for the most part, the things that are most important to the clients are really not that important, or not important at all to the judge in the case, if you have to go before the judge. Right,
and that's one of the things that we tell couples who are looking at their options of choosing litigation, mediation, or collaborative. We let them know you lose control when you hand your case over to litigation attorneys and a judge. They will decide the fate of your future. They don't know you. They don't know the particulars of your family and the needs of your family.
Absolutely.
They don't care. And in this process, in collaborative, we're here to help guide the process, to guide the couples in the decisions they need to make, but it really is a tailored approach according to what they need as a couple moving forward with two households and their children, the needs, the financial needs and emotional needs of the whole family.
All of that is really crucial, and the ability to control your own destiny, so to speak, is something that people don't really appreciate until they get into a situation where they're not in control of it. You know, I used to tell people in mediation that by the use of mediation, and this is certainly true in collaborative practice too, that you're avoiding what I call the well-meaning stranger, which the word I use for judges. Because I say, look, the judge is not going to come to your house. The judge is not going to watch you interact with your kids and all that. The judge is not going to know you the way the two of you know each other. And you have your differences, but why do you think that, you know, this well-meaning stranger can make a better decision about your kids, your finances, your future than the two of you can?
And I think the people who often choose litigation, they're looking for the judge to somehow give them restitution for the hurt that they have endured in the marriage or the reason that the marriage is coming to an end. But you can never heal the emotional wounds through that process.
No. And the judge is certainly not going to allow you to make, you know, long-winded speeches on the witness stand about how poorly you were treated over the last 20 years. You know, it's unfortunate. And again, I don't want to minimize people's suffering, but in the world of no-fault divorce, all that suffering is legally irrelevant.
Right.
As harsh as that sounds, it's really true.
Well, what Collaborative does, we do provide the container for those strong emotions that will be present. Whatever led up to the decision to divorce, there's always going to be, the sadness, disappointment, anger, resentment to some degree. And with the help of the coaches especially, we're there to help them with those strong emotions, that find a place to put them in a way that it won't derail the process, where it would fall out of Collaborative and end up in the court system.
Right.
So we're constantly working with them with their communication with each other, how to lower their anxiety, how to manage those strong feelings, and just stay on course with the decisions they need to make.
And we were talking a moment ago about that agreement, not the settlement, not the ultimate settlement agreement, but the initial agreement to do this as a collaborative divorce. And isn't part of that agreement an agreement to simply act as adults and to be straightforward and civil with each other and to share information voluntarily and all that kind of thing? Absolutely. For a lot of people, this may be their first divorce. So they don't know what to expect. But all we ask of them is that they have the intention to do this in a peaceful, non-adversarial way. And we will guide them through the process from there. But they have to be willing to be transparent with information, especially the financial information, to set aside those feelings, to work with each other, to be able to be in the room with each other. I know all about that. We'll talk about a lot more about this after a break. We've got to take a very short one, but we'll be right back with more information and insights from our guest, marriage counselor and divorce coach, Beverly Jewell. This is Relationship Radio, and I'm Jim Duzak. We'll be right back.
Ask the experts. Call toll-free right now, 1-866-472-5787. And ask our All-Star team to answer your question. That's 1-866-472-5787.
Thank you for calling.
VoiceAmerica.com.
Hi, I'm Jim Duzak, host of Voice America's Relationship Radio. I'm the author of a book called Midlife Divorce and the Rebirth of Commitment. It's a book that deals not only with divorce, but with how to enhance your marriage and possibly avoid divorce. Every chapter of the book contains real-world information and advice on issues like sex, money, communication, in-law problems, and the temptation to have an affair. For those thinking of separating or filing for divorce, the book explains how to do it the right way. It also deals with the critical issues of life after divorce, including when to start dating again and how to avoid repeating the mistakes of the past. If you visit my website, www.attorneyatlove.com, you can read excerpts from all 17 chapters of the book. If you'd like to order the book, the site has direct links to Amazon.com and the other major online booksellers. And you can use the site to contact me. I'd love to hear from you.
The latest business information is made simple with the Voice America Business Network. The professionals in the business world bring you live talk radio shows featuring an array of business topics, strategies for building wealth, sales and marketing, stock trading, investing, and business technology. Voice America Business hosts are professionals in their fields and bring to the airwaves weekly business discussions that offer up-to-date information, advice, and education. The Voice America Business Network, the bottom line in business talk. Want to have behind-the-scenes access to some of the greatest minds of today? On Shift in Action, we feature leading-edge innovators who are building a more conscious, sustainable, and healthy culture. Host Stephen Dinan offers live shows with evolutionary leaders such as Deepak Chopra, Van Jones, and others who are creating new paradigms for conscious living. You can keep your finger on the pulse of the latest frontier work with our weekly transmission of Inspired Wisdom on Shift in Action, broadcast live every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time, noon Eastern Time on Voice America.
Stimulating talk.
It gets those synapses in the brain inspired really fast.
All the time. The #1 Internet talk station where your opinion counts. VoiceAmerica.com.
You're listening to Relationship Radio with your host, Jim Duzak. An inside look at marriage, divorce, and midlife dating. Now, back to Jim Duzak.
Welcome back. We're talking today with Beverly Jewell, who is a Southern California marriage counselor and divorce coach, and she works in the field of collaborative divorce. Beverly has a couple of different websites. www.collaborativedivorceservices.com is one, and the other one, which focuses mainly on her marriage counseling practice, is www.essentialfocus.com, and you can contact Beverly either by email at bev, at essentialfocus.com, or by phone at area code 714-508-3525. Beverly, before the break, we were talking about some aspects of collaborative divorce, and I want to understand a little bit better about what your role as a coach is and what the other roles that the team members play.
Okay. Well, the team is comprised of one or two attorneys, depending on the needs of the couple. The attorneys are there to provide the legal guidance. Mm-hmm. The attorneys stay away from the DISO-master. As you know, when people hear numbers or a range of numbers for support, mm-hmm. They really lock in on that. So this is going back to crafting a tailored agreement that is just for their situation. So mm-hmm. those things will come out later as they're working with the other team member who is a neutral financial professional. Mm-hmm. And the role
is the financial professional available to both the husband and wife, or does each person have their own financial?
It's just one person. They're neutral. Mm-hmm. So their job is to gather all of the financial documents for looking at the debts and the assets and how to divide those things.
Not a fun job these days.
Not a fun job. And in the end, once all the information is gathered, their job is to help the couple look at options for dividing those things. They also will work closely with the attorneys on what the support numbers, child and spousal support, should be.
So the financial person, if they had questions about, well, how does this, is my pension going to be divided, for example, or something like that. He can explain what the implications of all that are, or some of the tax implications of some of things.
Right.
Well, that's very useful. So you don't really have to. Each person doesn't have to go out and get their own person, and you don't have these what are called dueling experts, right? Where you might have one person. Let's say if there's a family business or something. Sometimes you have the husband gets an expert that says, "Well, the business is practically worthless," and the wife has an expert that says, "The business is worth $1 million." That kind of thing.
What the financial person will do, they won't be the person to do a business evaluation or to assess the value of a home or the pension. So those specific things we will pull in another professional to do those, so that
the really specialized kinds of things.
Yes, so that the neutral financial person can stay neutral. But in doing so, we'll come up with a few names in the community that both people can agree on, either using one person for those business or pension evaluations, and perhaps use two people and take an average of the two.
That's a
lots
good
of options.
Yeah. Now, you as a coach, do you meet with your client, so to speak, every time that the client meets with the lawyer, or how does it work? Do you have just one-on-one sessions with your client?
Well, typically the whole process happens through a series of meetings. So once the couple has decided this is the approach that they want to use, all of the team will assemble, including the two clients, so the attorneys, the financial person, and the two coaches with the couple. So in that first meeting, we're looking at the immediate needs of the couple, the prioritizing of issues. It could be something like, are you still living together in the same house? What do you need to do to make this comfortable for yourself as you're going through the process if you're not ready to sell the house at this time?
Yep.
Have the children been told yet about the divorce? So we can help you know how to explain that to them if it hasn't been done so already. So in that first meeting, this is what we're doing. From there, they typically will go off and work with the financial person. The attorneys will step into the background while the financial professional is doing their job. Simultaneously, they will be working with the coaches. So I'll be working typically with the wife, and the other coach is usually a male, and he works with the husband. We like to keep it gender-specific for comfort for the client.
Yep.
And we're looking at what the emotional issues are, things that could be hot-button issues, how to help them with problem-solving and working with their spouse through this. We're looking at parenting issues, visitation schedules. So that's really what the coaches are doing while the financial person is working with them.
Yeah, and those details about the visitation, or what they now, at least in Arizona here, they call it parenting time, and all that stuff that comes up at Christmas and birthdays, and trying to define what Christmas is. I mean, does it include Christmas Eve? Is it all that stuff? It can be extremely time consuming and very detail oriented, and I'm sure it's a big service that you're helping your clients with on that.
And the wording that you just used is an example of what we're trying to do. We're staying away from the words like custody.
Right.
And we don't ever in this process do a custody evaluation to determine who the best parent is. We would never go into that realm because that's not what this approach is about. It's how to help both of them be the best parents that they can be.
That's the great approach. Now, typically, people wouldn't be doing the collaborative approach unless they totally misunderstand it, I guess. If they really, had deep-seated mistrust of each other, or just couldn't be in the same room together, right? You need an underlying level of civility and trust to do this, right?
You do. There are a few situations where collaborative wouldn't be necessarily appropriate. Some of those would be if there's a serious mental illness or
Right.
A drug or alcohol problem that isn't under control or being treated. If there's been domestic violence, say if there are restraining orders that wouldn't even allow them to be in the room with each other, or if there's a safety or trust issues because of domestic
So
violence.
those people are usually, either they don't come to you or you must be able to spot them fairly early on in the process, right?
Right. Those are issues that we're looking at in the initial assessment to make sure that even though they're saying they want to be in the collaborative process, are they appropriate for it?
You must get cases too, given, we've been talking about, we've been touching on the idea of no-fault divorce. In no-fault divorce, basically just one spouse can say, hey, the marriage is over, and there are irreconcilable differences, and the other person can be saying, what do you mean? We can still work it out, but the judge is almost forced to grant the divorce. I'm wondering if you ever have to coach people who, are just at most reluctantly, at best reluctantly going along with this, and who really feel that the marriage can be saved. It must be a tricky situation.
Yes, that happens more frequently than not. Typically one person has been thinking about leaving for a long time, and they finally have made the decision, the internal decision to do so, and they've just recently probably told their spouse of their decision. The other person may be hearing it for the first time, even though they know that there were problems in the marriage. They didn't realize to what extent.
The other one was so serious about it. Yeah, that's right. It's they've been living in kind of a dream world. They've been thinking that she just likes to complain.
So in those cases, we refer to that as having pacing issues. So we do a lot of coaching with the person who is hearing it. They're still in that state of shock of, is this really happening to me? So we need to be sure to slow the other person down because they're so much further ahead than the person who is just hearing it. They're ready to sign the papers tomorrow. Let's get this over with. They may have met a new person. They're moving on. So we slow that person down and we help the other one realize this is happening and to deal with the emotions of acceptance and getting to that place. In those times, we also suggest that they are working with a regular counselor outside of the coaching that I'm able to do, because they may need a little bit more support during those times.
Yeah, I mentioned in my introduction of you that you basically do two different jobs, for different clients usually, I guess. You'll work as a regular marriage counselor, if you want to call it that, for people who are trying to save their marriage, and then you work as a coach. I would think that the skills that you learn in one job must help you in the other.
It does. It helps me with communication, teaching communication with the person who is my client, and resolving differences, looking at the conflict resolution through the process. So all of those skills come in handy. The difference really is that I'm not there through the process as their therapist. I'm not there to help heal their childhood wounds or understand why they've become the way that they are.
Right.
Really, from this point forward.
But it helps you to understand what they're going through, though.
Exactly.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we've got to take another break because I'd love to keep talking about this. But we will be back with more information and insights from our guest, marriage counselor and divorce coach, Beverly Jewell. This is Relationship Radio, and I'm Jim Duzak.
Talk, talk, talk. That's all we do is talk. If you'd like to talk, call us toll-free right now at 1-866-472-5787. 1-866-472-5787.
That's it.
VoiceAmerica.com.
Hi, I'm Jim Duzak, host of Voice America's Relationship Radio. I'm the author of a book called Midlife Divorce and the Rebirth of Commitment. It's a book that deals not only with divorce, but with how to enhance your marriage and possibly avoid divorce. Every chapter of the book contains real-world information and advice on issues like sex, money, communication, in-law problems, and the temptation to have an affair. For those thinking of separating or filing for divorce, the book explains how to do it the right way. It also deals with the critical issues of life after divorce, including when to start dating again and how to avoid repeating the mistakes of the past. If you visit my website, www.attorneyatlove.com, you can read excerpts from all 17 chapters of the book. If you'd like to order the book, the site has direct links to Amazon.com and the other major online booksellers. And you can use the site to contact me. I'd love to hear from you.
Are you ready to grow your business? Listen for the Independent Business Owners Show with your coach, Rick Corrado. This entertaining talk radio program will bring you the tools to help increase your business. You'll learn sales success, time management, lead generation, business development, life balance, and much more. Rick Corrado is here to help you take your business to the next level. Listen for the Independent Business Owners Show, heard live every Monday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Pacific on the Voice America Business Network.
The biggest secret about men is that they are far more complicated than we often give them credit for. Join Dr. Chris Blazina as we discover more about the secret lives of men. This is an informative and positive program exploring the various facets of men's lives, from growing up to growing old. The Secret Lives of Men with Dr. Chris Blazina is broadcast live every Tuesday afternoon at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Pacific Time on Voice America.
Streaming live, the leader in Internet Talk Radio, VoiceAmerica.com.
You're listening to Relationship Radio with your host, Jim Duzak, an inside look at marriage, divorce, and midlife dating. Now, back to Jim Duzak.
Welcome back. We're talking today with Southern California marriage counselor and divorce coach Beverly Jewell. And as you may have heard before, Beverly has two different websites. One is www.collaborativedivorceservices.com. The other one is www.essentialfocus.com. And you can contact her by email at bev, at essentialfocus.com, or by phone at area code 714-508-3525. Beverly, I don't know, maybe you're not a lawyer, so maybe you wouldn't even be aware of this kind of thing, but back when I practiced family law, I always used to dread what are called enforcement actions. These are post-divorce cases where one party is basically saying that the other party isn't doing what the judge ordered him to do, whether it's not paying alimony or not turning over some property or whatever. I would think that enforcement actions would be relatively rare in collaborative divorce cases because the people make their own agreement rather than something that's imposed on them by the judge.
It's rare, but we do have people that are having a hard time complying with even the agreements that they've come up with.
Huh.
So if there's some emotional residue there of anger or resentment, that's what we call a coaching issue. So we'll do a little coaching with that person and bring them back into the fold and help them understand the decision that they made and what's getting in the way of following through with that. But what we do offer to clients, which is a nice service, even when the case is over, we let them know that if there's ever a modification, as the children are getting older or, a job change or someone wants to move, they can always come back into the team and we can help them with those modifications.
Well, that's great because, modifications are not necessarily hostile things. They can be if one person is thinking that the other one is, playing games or hiding assets or artificially lowering their income so they won't have to pay as much child support. I mean, there are all these things, but in general, though, if they had a good agreement the first time, of course, what you don't see are the ones where they lived not happily ever after, but where they didn't have any fights. The ones who have the problems are the ones who come back to you, but there's probably for everyone that comes back to you, there's 20 that, go on their merry way, and, you never hear from them again.
A move-away issue is a potential emotional problem area. Yeah. So if somebody decides that they've met someone who lives in another part of the state or even in another state and they want to move, that's going to stir up a lot of feelings for the person who is hearing that, and it's going to affect how they're able to co-parent. The visitation schedule is going to change.
Yeah.
They may not want them to move. So that is something that is necessary for the coaches to step into. I forgot to mention one team member that is used when there are minor children. Mm-hmm. It's another mental health professional, not one of the two coaches, but it's a child specialist. So if there are specific issues about how the children are dealing with the divorce, or how are they doing in school, are they in need of counseling themselves, then we enlist the services of a child specialist.
Yeah. Yeah, so many parents are just clueless about these things, or they see it only from their own perspective. If dad has a new girlfriend, the mother gets freaked out and says, that woman is a bad influence on my child, and I'm not going to let her sleep over anymore. That kind of thing. And it's very hard. I knew that. Back when I was practicing law, before they had these collaborative approaches and all of that, sometimes the lawyer had to be the bearer of bad news to the client, and the client didn't always like it, and usually the lawyers are not trained to do that kind of coaching, and
that's the beauty of collaborative. For whatever the issue is, we have a specific professional for that, so it frees up the attorneys to just handle the legal issues, and they're not having to be the therapist who's holding the hand and getting the 911 emergency calls. They can say, that sounds like something you need to talk to your coach about.
Mm-hmm. And the lawyer, though, when the lawyer does his or her job, the lawyer is not doing a lot of the things that cost a fortune in a typical litigated case, like having to take depositions of everybody and prepare for a contested trial and all that.
And that's how we are able to keep the cost low for collaborative, because there are no court appearances, and the attorneys a lot of times end up being the least used of the team members. The coaches and financial professionals whose fees are a lot less than the attorneys are utilized more often.
The lawyers basically just write up the agreement to some extent. I mean, they probably do more than that.
Right.
But still, I mean, they have to advise their clients on what the law is about alimony and whether, in a case like theirs, a judge would normally award it or not. That kind of thing. But you're right. I could just see that the client's interaction. The clients probably spend a lot more time with you than with any other team member, right?
With the coaches and with the financial professional, there are times that if it's information that could be emotional or emotionally laden information, the financial person needs to relay to the couple. They may want the coaches in the room with them to help the couple with those issues that they're hearing. Because they're not trained as mental health professionals either. That's out of their realm. So we can be available for that. A lot of times it's not even in-person meetings. We're having phone conference calls with the clients to get things done. So even if the couple doesn't live in Southern California, perhaps one does and the other one doesn't, we're able to do the process through a lot of different avenues, through email and conference calling, and sometimes they'll be here in person. There was one case where the wife lived in Washington State and the husband was here in Southern California. I met with my client once in person through the course of the whole divorce, and everything I did with her, all of the coaching, was by telephone, and we did a great job with that case.
Well, and that's a particularly tough job, and to try to do counseling, particularly about sensitive issues over the phone, where you don't have you can't read the body language and all of that kind of thing. it sounds like all your jobs are tough. I mean, you're a marriage counselor, which is a tough job, and the divorce coach. I mean, these are both kind of high anxiety, or maybe not for you, but for your clients. You're dealing with people of high anxiety. Which of your two jobs tends to be tougher? That's probably an unfair question to ask, but
they're both tough at times. But what I love about the collaborative process is I have a team that I'm working with, so the burden of it is not all on my shoulders or on their shoulders. We work so well together as a team, sharing information. If whatever the coaches are hearing, we share with the financial person, and vice versa, and with the attorney. So we're all the team members are always on the same page, and that's how we keep the process moving at a good pace. It takes a lot less time for that reason, and a lot less money than what a litigated case would be. The IACP, which is the international organization that all of the collaborative practice groups belong to, they've done some research to see what the overall cost ends up being for collaborative, and it ends up being about a third of the cost if that case had gone through litigation.
A third of the cost, so in other words, 2/3 less.
Exactly.
They usually will. Well, that's really something. Speaking of money, I'm wondering if in Southern California anyway, the current economic conditions are causing more divorces, or if people feel that they can't afford a divorce these days, no matter how big the problems may be.
I think what we're seeing right now, especially over the last year, is that people are postponing divorce. They know, even if they do it through mediation or collaborative, that it still will cost money.
Right.
And to try
what are they going to get? One half of nothing is nothing.
Right. So I think people are postponing it until they see a change in the economy. But we do stress for people that are looking at a divorce how cost-effective this is. So if they're able to and want to go through with the divorce, this is such a better process. So it's a real selling point instead of the high cost of litigation.
Yeah. Do you? I said at the beginning of the show that I hoped that I'd live long enough to see collaborative divorce become the norm in divorce cases. And I'm wondering if you think it's moving in that direction. Are you getting more inquiries from people these days than you did at 5 years ago when you started this?
We are. Collaborative is finally becoming a household word, the way that it finally did for mediation. And just to mention, the collaborative movement has been around for over 15 years, and it's nationwide as well as in parts of Europe. And throughout just the state of California, there are 34 practice groups. So it's really starting to become well known. There are thousands of professionals who have come together to take the training and to offer this as a healthy alternative.
And you don't have to educate judges the way you probably had to a few years ago, too.
Well, actually, the attorneys are in charge of that, and depending on which courthouse the case will be, seen in or the documents turned into, they want the cooperation of the judge. So,
yeah. It's less work for the judge if they can just see it that way. It's one less case they had that clogs up their courtroom for a week. Exactly. Unfortunately, Beverly, we've got to go to another break.
Okay.
I want to thank you so much for being here today. Let me mention again that Beverly Jewell's website is www.collaborativedivorceservices.com and also essentialfocus.com. And once again, Beverly, it's been such a pleasure. We'll be back in 2 minutes with one final segment of Relationship Radio. Thanks for listening.
Have you ever thought about having your own Internet talk show? Well, if you said yes, then click About Us. Then click Be a Host to get more information. Or just call Jeff Spenard at 480-294-6417.
Say that again?
480-294-6417. VoiceAmerica.com.
Hi, I'm Jim Duzak, host of Voice America's Relationship Radio. I'm the author of a book called Midlife Divorce and the Rebirth of Commitment. It's a book that deals not only with divorce, but with how to enhance your marriage and possibly avoid divorce. Every chapter of the book contains real-world information and advice on issues like sex, money, communication, in-law problems, and the temptation to have an affair. For those thinking of separating or filing for divorce, the book explains how to do it the right way. It also deals with the critical issues of life after divorce, including when to start dating again and how to avoid repeating the mistakes of the past. If you visit my website, www.attorneyatlove.com, you can read excerpts from all 17 chapters of the book. If you'd like to order the book, the site has direct links to Amazon.com and the other major online booksellers. And you can use the site to contact me. I'd love to hear from you.
Total career success. What does it mean to you? Voice America presents a radio program dedicated to help you achieve your career goal. Even in times of economic uncertainty, you can achieve your financial goals. Whether you're a college grad, new in the working environment, or a top-level executive, you will benefit from the practical and proven advice on job search and career advancement. Join Ken and Cheryl Dawson every Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern for Total Career Success on Voice America.
Wake up with a unique daily show. Listen for Mitchell John in the morning. Mitchell will bring you news, sports, and stock news from yesterday. You'll hear interviews from high-profile figures from the world of sports, entertainment, politics, and authors. Mitchell will talk to people throughout America. This is a show that throws right down the center. It's fun, information, and yes, even a little bit of music. Catch Mitchell John in the morning at 6 a.m. Pacific Time, Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays on Voice America, and Thursdays on the Voice America Business Network.
The Internet's #1 talk station. #1 talk station. VoiceAmerica.com.
You're listening to Relationship Radio with your host, Jim Duzak, an inside look at marriage, divorce, and midlife dating. Now, back to Jim Duzak.
Welcome back to Relationship Radio. I mentioned at the beginning of the show that in addition to being an author and a talk show host, I'm a lawyer. Since lawyers always love to plead their case, I call the final segment of each show my closing argument. What I try to do each week is to make my case, so to speak, on a particular relationship issue and offer some advice that you may be able to use right now. The issue I'll be discussing today is, when it comes to divorce, how you can answer your own question. Answering your own question is actually the name of a chapter in my book. The question I'm referring to is, should I stay or should I go? Stay in my marriage, that is. What I say in that chapter is that anyone who asks that question probably knows the answer already, or they would know it if they trained themselves to listen to what I call the emotional evidence. Emotional evidence is anything that your heart and your unconscious mind are telling you to pay attention to. Emotional evidence can be either positive or negative. If you miss your spouse terribly when you're apart for a day or two, that's an example of positive emotional evidence. So is smiling involuntarily when you think of him, or being in a playful mood when you're around him, or just wanting to prepare nice meals for him. If you have that kind of emotional evidence, the answer to the stay or go question is pretty clear. You want to stay. You may not be happy with everything about your spouse or your marriage, but the emotional evidence is positive, and it's telling you that you don't want a divorce. You just want a more fulfilling marriage. On the other hand, the emotional evidence may be negative. If you can't stand being in the same room with your spouse for more than 10 minutes, or if you roll your eyes when he brings up certain subjects, or if you mutter things under your breath when he yells at you from the other room to bring him something, if you instinctively pull away from him when he touches you, these are all examples of negative emotional evidence. I'm not saying that negative emotional evidence means that you should automatically get divorced, but if there's a lot of it, and if it's not balanced by an equal amount of positive evidence, it does mean that you're seriously unhappy in your marriage, and you should at least be considering the pros and cons of divorce. With all that in mind, I want to talk about an article I read recently by Dr. Brenda Soshana a prominent relationship author. The article lists 4 questions that you should ask yourself if you're struggling with the question of should I stay or should I go. I think answering these 4 questions would force a person to confront the emotional evidence, positive or negative, that I'm talking about. Dr. Shoshana's first question is, am I counting on the fact that my spouse will change someday? This is a big one. If you've been married to somebody for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and you're still desperately trying to change his attitudes or his behaviors, forget it. It's not going to happen. No one changes unless they really want to change. The second question to ask yourself is, even though he says he loves me, do I feel appreciated and loved? Actions speak louder than words, and for love to be real, it must be acted on. If your spouse says he loves you, but never listens to you, never cares about your needs, never pays attention to your moods, never shows you the respect you deserve, then trust your instincts. Trust the emotional evidence which is telling you that you're in a bad relationship. The third question to ask yourself is something holding me back? Dr. Shoshana explains that wanting to give to the other person, sexually or in other ways, is a good test of how you're feeling about the relationship. When you're eager to give, it usually means you're being cared for in return. On the other hand, if you're consistently holding back, something is wrong. The fourth question is the other person truthful, and can you trust him or her? Dr. Shoshana says, and I agree with her, that if you find over and over again that your spouse isn't truthful, isn't trustworthy, you may as well forget it. Trust is the basis of all good relationships. Without trust, you're always going to be doubting the other person's words, actions, and motives. You're always going to be skeptical of his explanations and his excuses. You'll never know what to believe. It's no way to live, but it's the way you will live unless you do something about it. Once you can honestly answer Dr. Shoshana's 4 questions, you should have all the emotional evidence you need. Whether you ultimately decide to stay or to go, you'll make that decision confidently, and you'll know that it's the right decision for you. Let me just give you those 4 questions again, because I think they're really important. The first one is, am I counting on the fact that my spouse will change someday? The second one is, even though he says he loves me, do I feel appreciated and loved? The third one is something holding me back? And the fourth one is the other person truthful, and can I trust him? I think those are really 4 key questions, and if you're getting the wrong answers to them, you really should take a long, hard look at whether you want to stay in that marriage. Anyway, I'd like to mention a couple of other things. If you're listening to this show live, by tomorrow night, today's show will be on the Voice America archives, along with all of the previous relationship radio shows. So if you want to listen to this show again or listen to any of the earlier shows that you might have missed, just go to www.voiceamerica.com and enter my name, Jim Duzak, that's spelled D-U-Z-A-K, in the search field, and you'll find it. And each show in the archives, by the way, can be downloaded in MP3 form for those of you who prefer to listen that way. I'd also like to mention for those of you in book clubs, particularly clubs that read nonfiction books, that if you choose my book, Midlife Divorce and the Rebirth of Commitment, as your book of the month, I'll be happy to appear by telephone at your meeting. And if you're located anywhere in southern Arizona, where I live, I'll be happy to appear in person. All you need to do is just to email me, jim@attorneyatlove.com, and we'll work out all the details, including where you can get my book. I'd like to talk a bit about next week's guest. It's going to be a really interesting show next week. Next Friday, May 22nd, my guest will be Veronica Monet, M-O-N-E-T, like the painter. It's an understatement to say that Veronica is a woman with an unusual background. For about 15 years, beginning when she was in college, she was a highly paid escort. After she retired from that career in her 30s, she wrote a book called Veronica Monet's Sex Secrets of Escorts, Tips from a Pro. She currently has an active counseling practice, helping both men and women deal with sexual issues. And she's very much in demand as a speaker, workshop leader, and as a radio and TV guest. If you'd like to check out Veronica's website between now and the show, it's www.sexwithoutshame.com. That's SEXWITHOUTSHAME.com. That's next Friday, May 22nd, here on Relationship Radio. And I can tell you, I have talked to Veronica on the phone, and she's going to be a very, very entertaining guest. That's next Friday, May 22nd. Until then, have a great weekend and spread some love around. I'm Jim Duzak. Bye for now.
Thanks again for joining us this week on Relationship Radio with Jim Duzak. Please join us again next Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Pacific Time on Voice America. Have a great weekend.
Thanks again for listening to the preceding program, brought to you on the Voice America Variety Channel. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit VoiceAmericaVariety.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader.